In this video, I will cover a difficult ACT math problem that involves using permutations. So this one reads, Kevin and Mark are members of a company's executive committee. The 8 members will be randomly seated at a circular table. What is the probability that Kevin and Mark will not be seated next to each other? So this problem deals with order. You're ordering people, sitting them around a table. So that's either going to be a combination or a permutation. And here the order does matter because they're dealing with, sitting next to each other. So we're going to deal with a permutation. All right, so let's see if we have a table. We're going to sit 8 people around it. Let's make seats here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So the first thing I want to find is how many ways that Kevin and Mark can sit next to each other. Now if they were in seat 1 and 2, they'd be next to each other. If they were 2 and 3, they'd be next to each other. 3 and 4, 4 and 5, 5 and 6, 6 and 7, and 7 and 8. All right, now they could switch. Now if you look at this, Kevin can sit in seat 1 and Mark in seat 2, but they also can switch. Kevin can be in seat 2 and Mark in seat 1. So that's going to be 8 times around, and they can switch. So that's going to be 16 different ways they can sit next to each other. Now if they're sitting down, there's 6 seats open. Now the other people, how many ways can they, sit in those 6 empty seats? And at that point, that's basically just a permutation. Okay, so 6 seats. You need to choose 6 people. Okay, so we're going to take the 16 times that permutation. And this permutation ends up being 720. So we have 16 times 720. I guess it's 11,520. Okay, so this is the number of ways that they could sit next to each other, but we want to know how many ways, what's the probability that they're not sitting next to each other. So now we need to figure out how many ways, totally you can sit the 8 people in the 8 chairs. So that's just another permutation. 8, choose 8. And that equals 40,320. Now if I take the 40,320 minus 11,520, gives me 28,800. Now that's the number of ways that they will not be seated next to each other. And we know the total number of ways everybody can be seated is the 40,320. So our fraction would be 28,800 out of 40,320. And you can put that in your calculator, then convert it to a fraction, and that reduces down to 5/7. So the probability of Kevin and Mark not sitting next to each other would be 5/7. So there's another way you can solve this problem that's a lot quicker. So let's assume that one of those guys sits at one of these chairs. So we need to eliminate the chairs next to them. So there's 5 possibilities out of the 7 that they won't be sitting next to each other. So this is just a second way to think of this problem. You have to do whichever method comes to your mind first. If it came with permutations first, then solve it that way. Might take longer, but you don't want to spend a lot of time figuring out what's the fastest way to solve it. So if you do come across a problem just like this, you can solve it this quicker method if you remember it.